we're shoving our crotches in people's faces. We're elbowing people in the neck. We're kicking people. We're throwing people on the ground. But we're like, oh, I don't want to speak publicly. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Bulletproof for BJJ podcast garage session.
Here we are. It's been maybe a year or so.
Yeah, about that.
Garage has evolved a little bit. You guys will notice there's a couple of bikes hanging behind me now. I built a little bike rack.
You bet. The family grows.
Yeah. A bunch of miscellaneous shit in cardboard boxes.
Exactly. There's kettlebells, there's dumbbells. It's a man's shed.
I think, we've spoken about it. This could become the home for the podcast someday.
It could. We could turn it into the Rogan-esque bunker at some point with, woodworking lathe in the background. Don't worry about machine guns.
Mind the drill press.
Yeah, that's right. Swords mounted, all kinds of things. But my friends, when the coach says, "Are there any questions?" there's always silence. I don't care what, unless I'm there, unless I'm actually in the class and I'm going to ask some questions, which usually the coach is like, I shouldn't have let JT talk. But it doesn't matter what school I go to. It seems like a formality where the coach goes, "Is there any questions?" But they're not actually looking for anyone to put their hand up. They're kind of like, "Okay, good. Now we do the next thing. Like, let's just go."
Yeah, it's a bit token.
But I feel that this is a problem because people not asking questions leads to problems and more questions later, which can create delay in learning.
Yeah. So on that, I think that I think that the coach has the best intentions. Then they're like, "Does anyone have any questions?"
Sure.
And I mean, I've learned this from years of coaching groups of adults that no one wants to stick their head out.
Yeah.
Right. If there's three people there in the class, then people are comfortable to ask questions.
Sure.
But when there's I think any more than 10 people, as soon as you say, "Hey," you're basically saying, "Does anyone have anything they want to say in front of everyone else?" And people are like,
"Oh,"
and you're like, and so I think as a coach, you might just be like, "All right, fine, let's get into it." But I had this last night when I was coaching and nothing, right? And then I'm like, seriously, we just went through a lot there. I'm sure someone has some shit they want to ask.
Yeah.
And then someone's like, "Actually, yeah,
you got to push them.
Could you just show it again or whatever?" But yeah, I really feel like that you have to make an effort to get people to talk there.
Yeah. Look, the reason why I wanted to bring this up was I was just talking about, it's a common phrase, which is like, ask better questions, get better answers. And this is just about trying to think about what you're doing. But ask no questions, get no answers. Pretending to know what you're doing is ridiculous because there's always some detail in jiu-jitsu that you haven't been shown before. Like I can't remember who I was talking to. I think I was actually talking with head coach at Alliance Sydney.
Fab.
Not Fab.
Oh, Murillo.
Murillo. I was talking to Murillo because that guy's
reasonable
trained
jiu-jitsu on that guy.
Ridiculous jiu-jitsu on this guy. Trained with Mario Hayes.
Just got back from Brazil. Apparently he's just gone turbo again.
Of course. He's never not turbo. The guy
6 times a day or some shit.
The guy's so strong, but also just incredibly technical. And I said to him, it's interesting that when you train with many high-level coaches, you might learn a new detail from each coach. They might show it slightly differently according to how they learned it. So there's all this information to be learned. And what I try to do is I go, "Oh, why do you do it that way?" Because the coach might have a reason you never thought of, and that is the lesson. Not just do this grip. Why do you do it that way? Now, this is an annoying habit I learned from a very young age. My mum is probably, she wished she didn't say to it, but she said to me when I was quite young, you should always ask why. Like, find out the reason behind something. And then eventually I'm saying to my mum, like, "But why? But why?" Kids just get real annoying with the coach. She's like, "'Cause I freaking said so. Go to your room." And so I try to do this with jiu-jitsu because I feel like I'm paying this money. I'm giving this time. I need to get what I want out of this. And that is, I want to learn something.
Yeah.
I don't want to just go through the motions.
On that though, have you always had that approach, or has that been something maybe in more recent, years?
I think being in a higher belt range, like I don't feel, when I was a white and blue belt, probably not as much. But once I started to get to purple, I think it was like I was more invested, and therefore I was like, well, I gotta get what I came for. Whereas as a white and blue belt, I was kind of like, I don't even know what's going on right now. I couldn't even ask a good question.
You wouldn't know what to ask.
Yeah, what the fuck do I?
I think another side of that too, though, is that like when you're earlier on, you don't like whatever it is that you need to know has been covered. When the coach is like, go here, go here, and then go here, and you're like, okay, that's what I need right now. But once you're like learning the triangle from close guard for the 120th time,
sure,
you're like, all right, I got the basics down, but hey, there's tell me about that little thing you do,
that little detail.
Yeah,
and I think it's also like confidence to speak up. You don't want to be like, I don't want to be the fuckwit. Never really had that problem. I just register at the front door. I am
always been okay with it.
I'm that fuckwit. I'm going to be. But the interesting thing, this is something that's occurred to me from speaking in a room full of pros. Like everyone there is like a brown or black belt. Everyone's a gun. But sometimes people don't want to ask a question because they don't want to seem like Yeah. And I think it doesn't matter if you're a white belt or a black belt. You never want to look stupid.
Yeah. Black belt's like, well, I shouldn't have to ask any questions. I know everything.
I already know.
Yeah.
But we know that that's not the case, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not afraid to look stupid. You guys know this. So what often asking a question does is it helps everyone else in the room.
Yeah.
Because you might say something that everyone's like, oh, thank God. I had no idea what that was.
That's why we have our Q&A episode. We're like, don't send us a DM and have this valuable exchange just one-to-one.
Yeah.
Let us put it on the show because surely there's going to be hundreds of other people that are wondering that same thing.
They can benefit.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing where in class, like, even though, you're there selfishly, you want to get what you want, but you are also a training partner. So you being a good training partner helps your training partner. And then also you putting yourself out there, which might seem, we're shoving our crotches in people's faces. We're elbowing people in the neck. We're kicking people. We're throwing people on the ground. But we're like, I don't want to speak publicly. Oh my God. Like it's such a contrast.
Yeah,
a room full of tough humans. They're like, I don't want to seem ridiculous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I've had that situation a couple of times recently where I've come to training with some water, but I haven't had any electrolytes, and I've finished training and I've had to go to a convenience shop and buy myself some kind of sports drink, usually a Gatorade. Cost me like $7. It's small and it really doesn't contain that much of the good stuff that I'm looking for, which are the electrolytes. Sodi, on the other hand, is my partner when it comes to hydration, and I'd simply just run out of it. And it sucks because I got to go buy expensive stuff that doesn't do anywhere near as good a job. I'm super stoked that we've been restocked with the Sodi, and now I can be properly hydrated when I train jiu-jitsu. This has always been an underexplored aspect of my training, and I'm so stoked that we now have these guys in place to support us and also the listeners of the show. So if you want to be hydrated on the mats so that you can perform at your best and have the best mental clarity while training, get yourself some Sodi. Go to sodi.com.au. That's SODII.com.au. Get yourself some delicious hydration salts and use the code bulletproof15 for 15% off. Go to sodi.com.au. Get yourself hydrated. Yeah, I do.
Have you seen much of this in the coaching? Because for those of you who don't know, Joey coaches. So he runs a thing called the Coaches Intensive. And so he is often trying to help people who are already very good get better. And that's, that's another room of pride, right? Like people who are already like, I'm a trainer. I know what the fuck's going on. They don't want to seem ignorant.
Yeah.
But they want to learn too. Have you encountered a similar situation like that?
Yeah, I guess I've encountered heaps of, say this thing of like not wanting to extend yourself in front of the group and ask a silly question.
Yeah.
A lot of that. And when I run that course, there are like, I'm a motherfucker on that front. I'll be like, guys, so give me some feedback on what we just went through. And I'll just have spoken to them for like an hour about social media marketing. And everyone will be like,
it's good.
And I'm like,
no,
you haven't nailed it. I know that everything I said there didn't make sense. Surely someone disagrees with something I've said.
Yep.
And so I like really have to like poke and prod, and then eventually someone's like, oh, actually, someone once told me this other thing, and you're like, great, this is a mad exchange.
That's good.
So yeah, I think it's always present, and I think it can come about in that scenario for maybe a slightly different reason, which is that, like, say we're spending 2 days on this intensive, it's an intensive couple of days. Your brain's a bit fried.
Yeah.
So often when it's like I've just finished my thing and we're like, hey, we're about to move on to the next thing, but does anyone have any questions? It's like more bandwidth to
Too
be like,
much.
what do I want to ask him? What do I not understand?
Yeah.
And I guess in jiu-jitsu, like, I can liken that to when you show up to a class and you're tired.
Yeah.
And you're like, fuck, I don't really want to be here.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and that's okay, right?
Sure.
Sometimes those times
You got there.
Yeah, you just get through.
You got there, and that was a big achievement in itself.
Yeah, but yeah, I do think we get in our own way in terms of getting what we actually want from the thing, like you said, because you'll go away from that and be like, oh, I should have just asked that thing.
Yeah.
Like, how often does this happen that you'll say, hey guys, here's the technique or whatever. Does anyone have any questions? Guys, you sure? Okay, great, let's get into it. And then as soon as you clap hands or whatever, someone comes over and says, hey, when you put your hand on the elbow. and often for me, I'm like, question time's over, bro.
Yeah.
Let's go. Like, you had that.
Yeah, no, that happens nearly every time.
Yeah.
It's always, but I think maybe it's because after you've done the clap or whatever, that the social attention pressure is off. So then people don't feel held back to say something.
Yeah.
And I think actually this has been a bit more revealed in our Facebook group because we have the main chat, and there's some people in there who are shameless in their use of the main chat.
Yeah.
They're not thinking about the group. They're like, this
great.
is my personal chat. I'm going to post 10 questions. All right. But we also have the coaching chat, the motivation, like side channels.
Yeah.
And they're very active. Like, I'm rarely on the main channel. I am in those side channels, whatever it might be. And it's cool because it's almost like you're at a party and everybody's there and you can't talk to everyone. But then you kind of go to a side room. You're like, oh, there's 5 people sitting on a couch. Someone's passing a spliff. All right. Puff, puff, give. And there's a bit more of it feels, intimacy is not the right word, not intimate. It feels more relaxed to be in a smaller group of people chatting, not speaking to 2,500 people potentially.
Yeah. Because the chat group has a label, and so you're like, oh, everyone here is here for this thing.
For this thing.
So I can talk about this thing.
Yeah. And it's interesting that
we should have a group for people who are not good at asking questions.
Well, that might be a stale chat.
I'll run that one.
Okay, cool. That's cool. It's a low maintenance chat. But I think this is where trying to get people to share or ask in front of everyone, when you get to the drilling or the specific training, questions come out. And the reason why I think it's good to try to ask the question when it's at the top of your brain, you're going to fucking forget.
Yeah.
You're going to roll. You had half an idea. I don't know, even if you might have experienced this where you've had a good idea. You're like, fuck, that's a great idea. I should write that down. It's not jiu-jitsu related. It's anything. You're like, shit, I'm going to do that thing. And then you kind of go on with your day, hour later, you're like, what was that genius thing I came up with? And now, what the fuck? It's just gone.
Yeah.
Right? And if you don't ask the question in the moment, if you then are now rolling or doing whatever the next thing is, you hit with adrenaline, sweat, you get bumped in the face, you're like, all kind of logic and reasoning related, that's gone.
Yeah.
So I think there is a value in asking the question when you got it.
Yeah, and it's a really good point you make there that, like, you might have something that you wanted to ask, and then you're like, oh wait, and then the coach shows like the next technique piece, and then drill that, and then at a point, coach is like, all right, it's time to roll.
Yeah.
And then it's like, fuck it, let's go put my mouth guard in, or like, let's get in. And then you forget it entirely because you just want to roll.
Yeah.
And like, that's exciting. So I find that, I think your point there about like, really, like when the thing comes to you, like really and do it, like get it out then, because it's potentially going to be the only chance you have to do it.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, an interesting thing, which I went to Michelle Nicolini's seminar the other night, at Monster Zen BJJ in the city.
Monster Zen.
I had never been there before.
Cool name.
Great. And they do like a full contact karate. They do kickboxing. They also
do full contact karate.
Yeah.
Wow, that's bringing it back.
Yeah. And so I believe Christian is the head coach there. He actually got his black belt that night.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So that was
from Michelle.
not from Michelle. It was kind of from Philippe.
Okay.
And Michelle was there.
And she's Philippe's coach, isn't she?
Of sorts. She graded him. Yeah. And he said to say hello to you.
Lovely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Still haven't met the guy.
Oh, he's a super nice guy. I think he's more. I think you may have met him.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, we've had a lot to do on socials.
Yeah, for sure. But anyway, not to worry. Many years ago, he was at Gracie Sydney.
Okay.
But not to worry. In that situation, this was an interesting thing which I hadn't experienced before. Michelle got everybody to show what had been done in the seminar.
Whoa.
She's like, you have to show one thing, but everybody has to show it.
Whoa.
Grab your partner and show me something, your favorite part of whatever we did tonight.
One by one?
It had to happen. Or pairs.
All right. So it wasn't like, okay, JT, show us.
Show everything.
Okay, Craig, show us. It was like, go and show and I'm going to have a look.
No. You had to do it in front of the class.
Ooh, that's stressful.
And she just sat there and people were like, I'm not used to this. And she's like, well, we're not. I'm just going to sit here in my very polite way and smile and you're going to do it. And then if people didn't, she would go, come on, do it. Like name a person, go. You're like, yes, boss. Like,
wow.
Yeah, it was great.
That's cool.
It was cool. I went to show my preferred technique, which is kind of like it's a bit of a headstand hip switch, like a pass. It almost flopped. Like kind of went to a headstand and was like
went a bit too far.
Overcorrecting. And was like, pulled it in and got it. But everyone was like, don't break your neck, dude. Anyway, I was like, don't worry, I won't break my neck. I'd just be dumb. But I ended up showing more than one technique.
Myself in front of Michelle.
Too late.
You got her on the podcast, right?
Yeah. It's cool. And I mean, she's the most high, so you can't. She's trained with all the greatest jiu-jitsu players of all time. There's nothing you can do in rolling or in any way that could impress her somehow. She's very much more about how you are as a person,
right?
Which is one of the great things about who she is.
This episode is brought to you by Parry Athletics, the exclusive apparel sponsor of the Bulletproof for BJJ podcast. We've been working with these guys for quite some time now. We absolutely love the company. We love their gear, both for training and also just looking slick off the mats. They got excellent no-gi wears, shorts, t-shirts, all that cool stuff. If you want to get yourself into some Parry clothes or you want to rock the Bulletproof for BJJ exclusive merch, you got to go through Parry, go to parryathletics.com and use the code Bulletproof20 to get 20% off your order. They ship internationally.
But here's something I want to say about the question thing, guys. If you can keep a question in your mind and you are like, I just can't even bring myself to talk in front of the class, grab your coach at the end of the class. Mm-hmm. I think there's actually, as long as you can keep it in your mind, and maybe a problem comes up in rolling. And I always if Joey hits me with a move and I'm like, why couldn't I stop? What's happening that he did that? And if I can't solve the problem for myself, then I hold on to that. Not that I bear a grudge or score points.
Hold on to it very tightly.
For years until I come up with the perfect counter. And then at the end of the class, I go, hey, come here, bro. I say, yo, Adam, can we show me how to f this guy up? No, but this is actually a key learning for me because it was a problem I couldn't solve. And you have the answer. You're
talking about my far side armbar?
No. That's still a problem I haven't resolved.
No, I think you got on that.
No. Anyway, but I mean, no, what I'm saying here is not necessarily the person's best technique, but what can be good is if something comes up in rolling and you're like, it vexes you and you're not sure what to do, the best time to solve it is almost immediately post-class, if you get an opportunity.
Yeah.
I know that...
Even in the depending on your relationship with that, even in the role...
You could be like, hey, man.
Hey, bro, can you show me how you did that?
That's...
Because if they've just tapped you... if they've passed or something,
Yeah.
you're not going to be like, hey, stop, show me. But if they've just tapped you, it's
Now
a
you're on
moment-
side control with the crossface. Could you just go back into my guard?
Yeah. I don't think that's going to work very well the second time. Let's just try it again. But yeah, like if they've tapped you, there's a moment of reset. It's like, bro, can you just show me what you did there?
Yeah.
And I think cool training partners are excited to share with you.
Yeah, they're open to it.
Yeah, because they're, you know, and there's that funny old school thing of like people not sharing techniques.
Yeah.
I really don't imagine. I haven't come across anyone like that for a long time, and I know I'm not training in gyms like that.
No, that is a more old school traditional approach because
Yeah.
information is out there.
Yeah, that's right. And so I think when someone says to you, "Can you just do that to me again and break down what you're doing?" People are like, yeah, like they're psyched because you're saying to them, "That's a really good technique," and
It's a compliment
and
to
I don't
them.
know it's a problem for me.
Yeah.
Help me solve it.
Yeah, and I think that there's humility in that. And I think that's probably at the base of all this like ask a question thing. It shows humility to say, I don't know everything. And we all know that, right? And we all very proud. It's funny, this is the irony. We very proudly talk about humility in BJJ.
Yeah.
Oh, it'll humble you. That's why we're the best.
Yeah, that's why you should never tap.
it's so
Ever.
it's so funny. It's such a jiu-jitsu irony, but at the heart of it is, like, for example, Bernardo Faria, everyone would say in the gym, he would train ultra hard, but he would get tapped a lot in the gym. But because he was open to losing, this is what made him such a tough competitor. Because he'd already explored that. He already knew
Yeah.
the pitfalls of all of those things. Whereas a lot of people who only play their A game and don't want to play bad positions, they get found out, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, man, I
It'd actually be interesting to know what, because I know Gary Tonin said a similar thing, right?
yep,
Like if you're afraid of getting tapped out in training, then you're like massively holding yourself back.
yes,
And, you know, it makes perfect sense. However, based on my experience, like my own training, but also the people I've trained with, not a lot of people train like that.
no,
And I'm interested to know at the elite level how many people actually follow that kind of philosophy.
yeah, I think it's a mix. Like, there was a phase at Absolute where Lockie would get us to play kind of like the thing we're trying to win at. Like, all right, we're going to do the position that you're good at or you're working on. But then once you'd done, I can't remember how many rounds, say 2-3 rounds of that for specific training, and everyone got to, you're doing a line drill, but you're coming off the line, you didn't know what guard you're going into. All right, we're doing your X guard. Oh shit, okay, you're on my back. And you would play that round out. But then he would say, all right, now do the thing that you kind of are not so good at. Like, what, you know, and for me, it was always my back. Once someone got my back, if someone got a body triangle, and I would defend a lot, but that's typically where I got submitted the most.
Right.
So I would just go, yeah, I got to work on my back defense. That was almost my default. Yep, get on my back. All right, I got to work from here
Yeah.
and just know how to be safe there. And yeah, it took me 3 or 4 months, but after a while, I was like, oh, I'm not getting tapped as much here. And it was just, yeah, familiarity.
Yeah.
You know, we all fear the unknown. UFOs, they're real people. No, that's not what I'm talking about. It's more that we've all been there where someone starts doing something to you and you're like, we're in different territory now. We're talking different languages.
yeah.
What the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And
Particularly in like, say, someone attacking your back where it's easy to let, to just stress out.
just freak.
F-, you know, and then, and then as soon as, and then you're like, oh, I went from being like kind of controlled, and then all of a sudden I was just freaking out.
Yeah.
And that's when you realize, oh, wow, this is a completely unexplored space for me.
Yeah. And look, I think for a lot of people, mount is that way. For me, back in the day, it was side control. I never wanted to be in side control. So I used to fight so hard to never, ever let someone pass my guard. And I trained with a guy called Zorro, or that was his nickname. This is at Gordo Jiu-Jitsu. He ended up going to Evolve MMA. I don't know what has happened to his career since, but he was a very top level heavyweight brown belt. And I was pushing on his hips so hard. He had like a Toriando, and he was like, and we were spinning in circles. And he had both my legs, and I hadn't taken care of that, but I just had both hands on his hip, and I was just pushing into his hip, and he's driving, and we're just doing burnouts, Homer Simpson style. And then he He just hip switched, and I just went, "Ah!" And then he had side control. And he just turned. He said, "Man, why are you using so much energy?" He's like, "It's too late. I got both your legs. They're over here. Like, you are past." He's like, "You would be better off giving it up, but then escaping the side control to then, infinitely waste your energy in a position where I've already won. That doesn't make sense." And I was like, fuck, no one ever said that to me before. I didn't even ask him the question, but that was my problem.
Yeah.
And sometimes you get that a higher belt just schools you. It's like,
Yeah.
dude, stop doing that shit. And they're solving your problem, even though your pride might go, no, it's just you got lucky.
Yeah.
But,
1 in 10, bro. 1 in 10 times it works.
Works on, 99% of white belts, okay? Don't care if you're a black belt, you got lucky. So this whole questioning thing, and this isn't to go too far down a rabbit hole, but what you might do next time you're in class is force yourself, go, I'm going to ask a question tonight.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe don't make it about the carnivore diet. I remember one time, I've said this a couple of times before, my guy Tommy, Tommy's a legend, but I said, any questions, guys? And I should have definitely qualified that and gone, any questions about the technique and the position we're doing tonight? He said, oh, JT, what do you think about the carnivore diet for weight loss? I was like, Tommy, we're doing reverse diet heaving, man. What the hell? I'm not going to talk about the carnivore diet right now, right? You are hijacking this conversation. Like, please, let's bring it back to what the fuck we're doing. So that's what I would say. If you're someone who doesn't ask questions and you don't feel like you've got anything to contribute, I think you will be surprised that taking that step, which takes a little bit of courage, a bit of humility, will actually help everyone around you. That's kind of my take on it.
Yeah, and I think prompting yourself to asking yourself, what is my question?
Yeah.
Forces you to reflect on what's being taught to you right now. And that in and of itself is a beneficial way to learn the thing better. Because you're like, okay, what am I going to ask? And then you're like, well, they're showing us, okay, I got to step here and then I got to switch my hips and then I got to go from the underhook to over the top. Like that is like this reflection piece.
Yeah.
You might find out that I don't have a question. I got it. And in that case, great.
Yeah.
But
sure.
more than likely you're going to be like, wait, I can't actually remember what happens after X.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it can happen, right? Because just your mind can wander.
Yeah.
But I think it also helps your coach because maybe it prompts them on a detail they know, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They didn't say.
Yeah. There's like, I was thinking about last night, like I was teaching some mount stuff.
Yeah.
And I kind of thought in my head on the way to class, I was sort of planning out the session about the details I wanted to cover. And I was like, that's mad. Like that's really comprehensive. And then I taught it and it was good. And, everyone seemed to do well out of it and whatever. But then afterwards I was like, there's so many details I missed.
Right.
And it reoccurred to me that you can't really cover everything.
No.
Right. Especially not in a class format. Maybe
No.
in a seminar you can go deeper, but
Sure.
and so it's like, well, that's why, one person can coach them out like that.
Yep.
One person can coach it 20 different ways.
Sure.
Let alone 20 different people.
Yeah.
But there's always more details.
But there's also an art to enough.
That's right.
Right. And
you've got to draw the line.
I think you've probably brought this to my attention more and more, recent years. And I've thought about it more too, is the coaches need to want to share all the information. And that's actually too much. People can only retain so much. So it's really important that it's the same thing if you see like great MMA coaches. They say one, maybe two things in the corner. Like, hey, this is happening, stop that. Also, you need to do this. Here's some water.
Yeah.
Head movement.
Doing great.
Head movement.
Are we having a good time?
Head movement.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. But it's one of those things too. If you are asking the question, don't ask a fucking multiple choice, fucking 20 answer. Like, just make it about one thing. Like, what's the key detail?
Well, there's a topic we didn't go into, and I don't think we should, but there's people who ask questions as a flex.
Oh,
and you're like, dude, quit it with the Spider-Man questions. Like, I get it that you've like thought way ahead about this technique.
When I place my big toe and well, Keenan shows it like this. And what do you, No, I just think, that's true too.
But,
like there's There's someone who always asks the question,
Yeah.
and it's actually not helpful.
Yeah, don't share this episode with that person.
But yeah, there's a phrase, I actually wrote it down today as my quote of the day, which is wisdom isn't knowing what to say, it's knowing when to shut the fuck up. And so there's also an element to...
I'll repeat that to you sometime.
Please, thank you. I knew you'd like it. Joe's like, I am so wise. I am not. So there it is, folks. I think you will be surprised at what it will do for you, but also what it can do to help your training partners. And if you're a room of, if you can be the brave one, that then gives other people permission to do something the same.
Absolutely.
Now, if you got something out of this, my friends, we would appreciate a like, a follow, and a subscribe. But something you can do on the audio platforms that will help us, whether it's iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get this, is to give us a 5-star rating. This is massive. Now, a lot of our loyal listeners have already jumped in and done it, and it's helped us, but there's a lot of you who haven't, and we need you on this one, guys. We need you. So we appreciate it. Like, follow, subscribe, and give us a 5-star rating.
Legends.
You.